Thank you, Nyakafi. I don't have time to redeem myself, so no, I'm not a workaholic, and I hope Chris and Morris did not hear that. Great, so I want us to begin by imagining a typical orchestra, where each musician plays a critical role. Whether it's the violinist, the percussionist, the pianist, the magic happens when they all play in harmony. Now, I want us to also think of traditional influencer marketing as a soloist, right? The idea that one person with a massive following can command the entire room, right? But the data from our report, which I'll expound on in a bit, tells us that this model is changing. What we're seeing is that influencer marketing is evolving to something more like an orchestra, where trust, niche expertise, and community engagement are far more important than the loudest solo performance. The shift we're seeing is the era of the soloist, where one person with 1 million followers dictated consumer choices is fading. And now we're entering this era where trust, engagement are what are driving influence. To give you context, us as Baraza Media Lab and Wowzi, we surveyed over 1,500 participants across Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And our sole purpose was to get a better understanding of the state of influencer marketing in East Africa. And what we did find as our biggest finding is that there's a massive shift from this old school approach that I mentioned earlier to a focus on authenticity, niche expertise, and community. I promise I might repeat those words quite a bit, so hopefully they'll stick. Now, I'm going to walk us through 3 key findings. The first one was that the influence economy is booming. 75% of the youth that we surveyed spent up to $100 last year because of influencer recommendations. And we're talking about food, technology, music, beauty, fashion, and the like, and technology as well, yeah. And also, it is projected that African social media marketing will hit 1.2 billion this year. But what stands out, again, as I said, is that people are not just buying from influencers because they have big followings, they're buying because they trust them. The other major finding was that trust is the driving currency. For a very long time, if you've been in advertising and marketing, you know that brands measured success when it comes to like followers. So if you had 10,000 followers, you're doing great. If you had 100,000, you're doing amazing. If you have 1 million, you're a star. You really are. But the new metric, based on the study that we did, says that 68% of consumers trust influencers who align with their personal values, not just those with big numbers. Another rising trend is the creators who focus on showing their authentic side more than, being a sales machine, right? The one that I actually find personally very interesting is the rise of de-influencing. So there are influencers now whose focus is on telling you what not to buy. So for example, I personally, this is a personal opinion entirely, I don't believe you need a 12 to 16 step skincare routine. I don't even know who has for that. I do not. So what they're doing is they're telling you, we're living in this economic state right now globally. You don't need to buy everything from this particular brand. You probably just need 2 items, yeah? So there's that. They're also calling out overhyped products, yeah, that are being pushed aggressively towards consumers. And finally, they're actively holding brands accountable. So when there are mistakes, they're holding brands accountable and using their platforms for that. Another major finding is the power of community. These influencers, who are the most influential in their space right now, are using their platforms to create a sense of belonging and community, where you feel like if I DM this influencer, they'll actually get back to me and they'll actually give me, sound advice, right? They care. And as well as they're focusing on engaging their audiences beyond aggressive advertising, and they're also basically taking on the role of conducting this orchestra. Now, So what does this mean for brands, creators, and policymakers? And before I get into these 3 recommendations, I want to acknowledge that there are already some creators, brands, and policymakers who are actively embodying the above, yeah? So we have, for creators, right now, the focus should really be about building relationships and engaging as authentically as possible. We believe that you don't have to accept every single partnership that comes your way, and that a single campaign that aligns with your community is worth more than 10 that don't. For brands, it's high time we forgot celebrity endorsements that have little to no engagement. The best marketing today is collaboration with niche creators who actually engage actively with their audiences. And finally, for policymakers, we are at a point in time where influencer marketing is an industry now. It's not a fading thing, right? It's shaping economies. There are people whose livelihoods depend on this, and it needs thoughtful policies and not just knee-jerk reactions. So as I mentioned earlier, this is just a very short summarized snippet of what is in the report that we put together. For the full comprehensive one, please visit our website, barazalab.com. And as I close, I want to read this out loud. So back to our orchestra, the future of influencer marketing isn't a one-man show. It's a symphony of trust, of niche expertise, and of engaged communities. And the brands and creators who understand this, they're not just making noise, they're making music. Thank you.